when you're not taught the right coping skill, what, what's your outlet?
Mhm.
What's your outlet? How are you dealing with it?
What's good, y'all? Welcome back to another episode. This episode specifically has been in the works for such a long time. We're finding the right people, finding the right time to get this episode going, and we're here. Men's suicide, men's mental health. This is a interesting topic that people talk about, but I feel like not a lot of people talk about in depth. But before we get started, we have some amazing individuals, so let's have them introduce themselves.
So, guys, so obviously Mario One, right, the host of the podcast, has introduced himself. I'm actually also named Mario, right? Coincidence? I don't know. Just kidding. But I was asked to be on this podcast to help out answer a couple of questions about men's mental health, regarding depression, suicide. I know it can be a heavy topic, uh, but hopefully it is a very informational podcast. And hopefully it does help out, a lot of people to understand a little more in depth. That's like what goes into depression, especially with in the world of men, because I feel like there's a lot of closed doors. But anyways, sorry. Moving on.
Hi everyone, my name is Christopher John Magallanes. I'm an old friend of Mario once, just meeting Mario 2. Hopefully we can be friends as well. I met Mario 1 back when I was going to ELAC in the late 2010s.
Nice.
And yeah, I met up with him a while, I would say like 3 weeks ago. And he asked if I would be down and be part of this podcast. And here I am. Yeah.
Yep, there we go. So just amazing men, just people who just want to know more, have a conversation about this stuff. And I agree with you, Mario, that this is a hefty topic. Not many people, especially guys, were not used to talking about, or were even uncomfortable talking about personal experience with depression and even suicide. That I feel like I've gone through depression and feel like, oh, I'm like, okay, I got through this phase and now I'm okay. I don't have to worry about it. Lock the door. I can focus on life. But things that are not healed properly eventually come back up. I think of it as a faucet, a leaky faucet that you can turn off the water and it'll stop it for a little bit, but that leaky faucet eventually can mess up pipes and cause more damage. So unhealed wounds, unhealed trauma gets worse when it's not treated.
Yeah.
Before we get into that definition of suicide, just ending one's life.
I think just to kind of add to that, I did pull up a couple of like articles just to get like actual like information, factual thing. I think it's like part of my profession, you know what I mean? So I'm already used to this. But so number one, I think like what is suicide, right? For those that don't know, people often figure like it's just something that um, you know, some people say like, oh yeah, it's just like the point of no return. It's a point where like people just get so tired of life and they just decide to end it, right? It's the end of the show, it's the end of the line, whatever you want to call it. That's what people think it is. But according to let's see, the National Institute of Mental Health, we check, we look at the definition, we check the definition. It's suicide is a leading cause of death in the US and a major public health concern. When a person dies by suicide, the effects are felt by family, friends, and communities. For this one, we're just gonna get into like what the definition is. So suicide is when people harm themselves with the goal of ending their life and they die as a result. How does a person get to this point, right? Depression, suicide, etc. It definitely does get in suicide definitely does get into like a whole lot of like different area of life. And it's crazy how many people suffer from symptoms, that lead up to suicide. I think sort of more recently, like in social media, it's been seen that like, you know, um gender wise, I feel like males don't really talk about their depressive thoughts, their anxieties, their trauma. And I feel like, I mean, I'm not too sure about like too many different ethnicities and like the rates in different ethnicities, but I know within the Hispanic culture, we are definitely taught um, in a much more vulgar way, to like man up, quote unquote, around that, right? They always say like, oh, like estás deprimido, like you're depressed, man up, you know. And it's like, okay, but like, what are we teaching? What are we teaching men internally? What are we teaching them to practice internally? And when people say like, oh, you're depressed, man up. You have anxiety, man up, you know. Um, they're essentially teaching men to like not express their feelings, not explore their feelings, not express their feelings, to just internalize it and bottle it up.
Mhm.
You know,
Mm.
that's a huge part of like um what leads into suicide. I I myself, like in my profession, I've heard a lot of story, where a lot of people have attempted with the intent to actually, out themselves completely. And it's for a lot of reasons, specifically with men, a lot of them feel like, well, I'm less than a man. Like I don't fit the definition of a man. I don't fit um the definition in which my father said what a man is, or I feel like I'm not enough of a man, for my wife or for my kids or um things like that. And whatever mistakes like entail that, what are they doing? What are they doing for their mental health?
Mm.
They're not doing anything because again, their father and their father's father and their father's father's father, it's a chain. It's like generational trauma. It goes
Mm.
way back down the line. And, you know, their father projected their hurt onto them. Their father projected what they were taught in
Mm.
their childhood, adolescence, and adulthood of like, no, you man up, you shut up, you man up, and you keep going on with life, you know.
Mm.
But again, I know it's like a whole like rabbit hole of it. I'm just not trying to get into all of it. I hope that's okay.
Yeah, yeah, good. I
Uh,
wanted to add something. You reminded me of a podcast I was listening to before recording this, or working on the episode. Was the gentleman talked about what you said, Mario, that students. I'm thinking of students as I was working with a kid earlier. Boys and men, and even people just in general. A lot of times they say, "I'm suffering" or "I'm hurting. I need help." And unfortunately, a lot of people who ask for help don't get the help. They're told that exact thing, like "man up" or "you don't know what I'm going through," and people eventually stop asking for help or stop looking for resources just because of that trauma. That is like, maybe I something's wrong with me because I'm feeling this, and I shouldn't be feeling this.
yeah. And that's true. Like there's a lot of different sayings, that boys, adolescents, and even adults, young adults, are told. Even I'll be honest, I've dealt with and I've given therapy to people who are even in their 50s, 60, you know, and just because they're like, these like tall dudes, we're talking like 6 feet, 6
Super
feet.
buff.
Yeah, people think, and they've told me to like, people think that just because I'm like tall, like I'm big, I'm tough, I can like handle whatever, but they tell me like in reality, I'm just a gentle giant. I don't like to hurt people. I don't like to say mean things. I don't like to have to protect myself just because people think you're the tallest, you're the baddest. I need to take you down to show dominance, and that also leads into depression because I mean, think about what these people go through like on a daily basis. If that's been their lifestyle, like, oh, they're the tallest, they're the baddest, and if I take them down, um, I could, I can gain like that dominance, like that, I guess like the powerhouse, you know, um, think about all the depressive thoughts. And what do other guys tell them? Like, oh, come on, man, like you're tough, you're big, like you can take them on, you're good. But it's like, no, what if they don't want to? What if they really are just like gentle? Same thing with with children, adolescents, and young adults, and even older adults. People tell them all the time, like, man up, like you better not cry. You better not cry. I'm gonna give you a reason to cry. You
Mhm.
know? And it's like, oh really? So like you're essentially putting me down for wanting to express my feelings. And what happens when we express our feelings? We essentially heal. You know, a lot of people say, especially to men, like, you better not cry, I'm gonna give you a reason to cry. Or they tell them like if you cry, like you're weak, you're being a little insert description, insert vulgar word. And in those moments, again, they're forcefully having the men or the boy or the teen um internalize all this, and they're not allowing them to heal. I would say this: depression can lead into like anxiety, can lead into resentment, can lead into trauma. And I tell clients this all the time. I'm like, trauma, can also be like rooted in depression, and it could be rooted in anxiety, or both at the same time. And I tell them like trauma is it's like a cut. And I tell them like I'm not a doctor, but whenever you get a cut, what's your body's immediate reaction? You go and you try to heal it right away. You disinfect the wound, you clean it up, you stop the bleeding, or you try to stop the bleeding, and then you put a band-aid over it, and then you give it time to heal. But what happens when you don't do that to a wound? I've been told that, you let it bleed, it's bleeding. You let it, depending on like how big it is, you bleed out, you die out, or you lose a lot of blood and you pretty sure you gain complication. You let it bleed, you get it, you don't, disinfect it, you don't do anything with it. You let it get infected. And at some point with infection, if you don't take care of that, pus starts to come out, and then further complication. And right after that, I've been told that eventually it turns into gangrene. And what happens? You got to cut off like whatever part of it is, gangrene. If not, it's going to start eating like the rest of the limb or the rest of the piece of you. And trauma's like the same thing. You don't, if you don't take care of the hurt, what are you, what are you doing to yourself mentally, emotionally, physically, and even spiritually? Yeah. With trauma or with depression, same thing with depression. It's like a cut. Something had to, sorry, going back to it, circling back to depression. Um, something had to have happened. Something had to have been said. Something had to have been internalized for the person to become as depressed as they are. Now, every person's journey is different. Every person's mindset is different. Every person's thought process is different. Their coping skills are different. And when they don't take care of it, that depression can also become trauma. Anxiety can also become trauma. Depression can definitely become trauma. And if they don't like take care of it, it gets worse and worse and worse and worse. Because, the more that we stick to that thought, or the more that we ruminate, right? And ruminate is essentially like going around in circles and circles and circles around the same issue and not finding a solution. That's just cutting that's cutting deeper into it. It's like having like a cut and just cutting deeper into it. That's like having a scab and just ripping it right off, and getting letting it get worse, or just reopening that wound. So going back to the question, how does the person get to this point? So again, this is from the National Institute of Mental Health. These are not my words. If you've been experiencing some of the following signs and symptoms most of the day, nearly every day, or for at least 2 weeks, you may have depression. Persistent sadness, anxiety, or empty mood, like feeling empty. Feelings of hopelessness or pessimism, feelings of irritability, frustration, restlessness, guilt, worthlessness, helplessness, loss of interest or pleasure in hobbies and activity, which, fun fact, that would be known as dysthymia. Let me see, fatigue, lack of energy, feeling slowed down, difficulty concentrating, difficulty remembering for sure, difficulty making decision, difficulty sleeping, waking up too early in the morning, or oversleeping. Oversleeping is a huge one in a lot of people. changes in appetite or unplanned weight changes, physical aches, pains, headaches, cramps, digestive problems without clear physical cause that do not go away with treatment, and thoughts of death or suicide attempts. So you can see, like, as you stay in the depression, it gets worse and worse and worse and worse. The farther you go down that rabbit hole, the farther your emotions begin to run your mind. The farther your emotions begin to run your mind, the farther that they begin to make you have like unwanted thoughts, racing thoughts, feelings of impending doom, which links into anxiety. But the more that you stay in that mindset, the more that you allow it to, again, run your thoughts. It's like you create, there's like a cloud, and you're only feeding it more and more and more. And the more that you feed it, the bigger the cloud gets, the worse your outlook on life begins to become.
You say it's almost like a parasite.
Oh yeah, for sure. So how does a person get to this point? I would definitely say like a lot of it has to do with like ruminating. A lot of it has to do with where their headspace is at. How long do they stay in their heads about this? How long and how deep do they allow their imagination and their thoughts to run into it? Because some people will allow it to completely overtake them, like fully, like they will not stop. Their mouth will be like an AK-47 of negative thought, you know. And then it's like, at what point do you tell yourself, like, I need to get up, I need to get going, I need to get out of this state of being? How does a person get to this point? I mean, as we just mentioned, like all the symptom and everything, I've also worked with clients that, they straight up told me, like, I haven't worked for like a year and a half, 2 years, 3 years. Human interaction, I'm good. I don't need to talk to people. Like, they annoy me. Like, honestly, I like animals so much better than humans. And I'm like, okay, interesting. I mean, I understand that there's like an unconditional love with animal. However, it's like I tell them, like, the reality of it is they can't talk to you. They can't help you out of this pit that you've like dug so deep in. How do you expect to get out of this financial debt that you're in? Like, you're like in the negatives right now. How do you expect yourself to get out if you don't talk to people? How do you expect for the other people to help you out, get outside of your own head?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny, Mario. Like that description you gave of like loathing like human interaction. I was telling Mario I think I might have told Mario one about it like last time we met, that during the pandemic, that's literally like word for word exactly how I felt during the pandemic when I was finishing up my bachelor's program from home.
Mhm.
Um, I would get a phone call from my closest friends that I wasn't seeing
Mhm.
and that I would only ever see on a Zoom call when we were in class together, or if they weren't in school anymore, that I would like sometimes get a meme from them. They would
Yeah.
call me while I was playing like Dark Souls, and I would get like viscerally angry. I'd get like actually like I wouldn't answer sometimes. I usually wouldn't answer the first time, and I'd be like, I don't want to fucking talk. Why the? Oh, sorry, Chris. I don't want to. Thank you. I don't want to freaking talk. Why the frick are they calling me? I would get like that angry, like unreasonably angry. And about like 3 months into that, it finally occurred to me when I was like talking to like I was like kind of talking to like I started like a romantic relationship where like I was talking to someone more. It occurred
Yeah.
to me like, wait, like why am I enjoying talking to this person that like granted it's a romantic like situation, but all these friends that I've had for years, some of them decades, I'm now like upset about. That's not right. That shows like it's not aligned with like my values where I value my friends. What's going on with my head? Like I need to get outside. Like what you said, like it gets to a point where like, depending on what kind of condition you're in, how maybe how you were raised, how you were brought up, if you're willing to pull yourself out of it and be like, I gotta do something. Like, I gotta do something that isn't this. I gotta do something that isn't being in my room for 12 hours playing Dark Souls. I gotta do something, and then only going out to go deliver for Amazon and have less than stellar human interactions with people who are upset because I'm blocking up traffic, or that I'm not delivering their package at the right place, or that, like, I don't know, and it's funny, back then I would remember all the negative interactions I had working that job, but now a lot of times I remember all the nice stuff. I remember waking up early in the morning and seeing the sunrise and talking to nice people and going and getting a donut after, and the people being nice to me. And but back then I was just very focused on the negative, and a lot of it was just from the fact that I was depriving myself of human interaction. I know it was like the pandemic and it was lockdown and everything,
Mhm.
but like I was still going out to see that girl I was talking to. So clearly it wasn't that much of an issue. I was putting myself in that seclusion. Um, and I don't think that invalidates it. That's just like something that's like humans, we have a tendency to hurt ourselves sometimes, like even like when we don't. And actually, I think when we talk about like suicide with men, I think a big part of it, why men have a higher, I believe, I didn't do as much research, I'm sorry, but I do know that men have a higher success rate of suicide than women. Women have a higher attempted rate.
Oh,
Um, I believe, but I know men successfully perform like the act um, at a higher rate with more success. Um, and I think that comes with like I feel like men are taught more violent ways of coping. So, like men, I think women, it's more common for them to attempt like a drug overdose, a purposeful drug overdose. And a lot of times they'll get resuscitated. Actually, I know a couple people, women actually, who attempted those things, drug overdoses, but they were resuscitated, and thank the Lord, they're okay. Um, but most dudes that I've heard of commit suicide, it's either like with a car, like the car exhaust thing, or with a gun, um, a lot, hanging. It's like a lot of like very direct methods. That's like, all right, this ain't gonna go wrong any one way or another. Where I'm sure that's not 100% true. I don't know the statistics, but I do know that men in general, we are just taught more violent coping mechanisms and more unhealthy coping, a lot of unhealthy coping mechanisms for a lot of like emotional like issues we have. Right now, there's this very popular term going around with young kids. Probably came from the black community first, I imagine. Like a lot of like American slang does, crashing out.
right.
You guys heard that? And
Yeah.
see, that term is very funny, but when I hear kids say it, because I'm a tutor and I also work in like a theater, and there's a lot of like student matinees. When I hear boys use that term, and even when I see the memes, it's interesting because the concept of it is almost as if they're very self-aware of the fact that they can be getting into a very dangerous situation with the imminent possibility of dying, of deleting themselves.
Yeah.
Like I hear, because the world is dangerous, and there's lots of ways to off yourself if you really want to. There's ways to attempt it, and you'll look really tough if you don't end up dying from it. I worked. I think I told Mario about this. I might have told Mario about this too. I tutored this one boy, and I've been tutoring him since during like this 2021, I think, when he was like in seventh grade. And when we're young, we have like impulse control issues. Like we were working one day, and he just like got the idea in his head, and he went through with it to like smack me in the face, and he did it, and it wasn't hard, but he did it, and I looked at him, and I stood up and I said, "We're done for the day." And he said, "Oh, I'm really sorry." He started like really apologizing. And I said, "We're done for the day. You're not in trouble. I'm not going to tell your parents, but we're done for the day." And I come back the next day and he's feeling really bad. And he apologizes and he cries. And I'm like, "Oh, dude, it's okay. Like, I'm not mad about it. I've literally done that when I was your age. Like, I've literally done that." But I couldn't help but like tell him that what I told him was, look, I know that you feel comfortable with me and you think you could push the boundaries with me, but I don't like getting hit. And most people don't. I would say all people don't. And it's one thing for you to be right here in your house doing math with me and to hit me. because I'm Chris and I'm not going to hit you back. Chris isn't going to hit you back. But one of these days, you're not going to be 12 anymore. You're going to be and he's a big kid. I told him, you're going to be a big 20-something-year-old guy at a bar talking to a girl, thinking he's being funny. And you're going to do something dumb like that to a guy, and you're not going to know it, but he has 4 other friends there. And they're not going to, I don't got to explain what happens. They're not going to beat you up. They're going to beat you up, like near death probably. That happens all the time. That happened to my cousin. That happened to this one guy I went to high school with. He essentially did that to a guy. He committed second degree. And that happens all the time. And I told him that. And he took it to heart, because ever since that day, he does not play around like that with me anymore. And I told him, I'm not going to hit you, and I'm never going to hit you, but you gotta watch that, because that has real consequences. But think about how many guys are like that. How many guys, I know guys who go to a bar and they're like, God, I hope I get in a fight. And you know what I'm saying? There's guys who wake up in the morning and they're like, God, I wish somebody would. Like there's terms for it. I wish somebody would. That's a term for a reason. There's so many people, and women are like, there's some women like that too, but you mostly hear that like aggressive, like outlook from men. And I think that has a big, like, I think there's a lot of ways of committing suicide that aren't considered suicide. But if you kind of think about it, I mean, you're attempting to eliminate your own life just through a different means, and I'm not saying that like that we should consider all that suicide, but I think that has some part when we talk about why the rate for men is higher, or why it's going up, because the world is just getting more expensive, and you just have to work more and more and more. And it's like you were talking about that guy, Mario 2. I'm sorry, Mario B. I want to call you Mario B. I feel like I call you Mario 2. It's like you're talking about that guy, Mario B, where it's like, like I haven't worked in, like, where you said he hasn't worked in like what, like a year, you said?
Yeah, like year and a half, maybe 2 years.
2 years? Like, yeah, like, can you blame him? Like, like, I mean, because I mean, maybe you're lucky enough to like your job. I do like my jobs as well. Yeah. But I mean, most people I know don't, and at least not their day jobs. Because I'm an actor. I do arts. So most people I know don't like their day jobs. Awesome. And yeah, so like to hear someone be like, I haven't worked in 2 years. I mean, I can't blame you. I mean, it's, not many people want to go work at Starbucks. Not, SpongeBob doesn't exist.
Yeah.
That guy. There's a very few of those guys. We're mostly Squidwards.
Yeah.
And yeah, I guess like that mentality of like that crash out mentality of like, I'm gonna put it all on black, and either I look sick or I die is like, I mean, I've definitely felt that way at some points. I've definitely had that mentality at points in my life. Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, like there's even, and I think it even kind of comes with like that trying to prove to others about masculinity, where it's like, oh, my grandfather, like maybe your grandparents, maybe your father used to like be abusive. Like maybe someone's older male relative used to be abusive, physically abusive. And you think, well, I'm never going to be that guy. But then you take on a bunch of other abusive, you're smiling but then those guys take on a bunch of other abusive traits that are like, okay, Dick, you're not like leaving physical bruises, but you're doing a lot of mental damage to people around you because you're not learning positive, healthy coping mechanisms to like not incur this like urge to like impose your masculinity on everyone and prove how much of a man you are to everyone. And so, what is the least selfish way of proving to everyone how much of a man I am? I'm gonna go crash out. I'm gonna go find a guy, like you're like a big guy who I think would make me look cool if I smacked him up, and either he has a gun and he kills me because people just carry guns nowadays, or
Right.
even in California. I mean, politically, people want to carry guns. That's fine. Like I understand why. It's but not everyone has good intentions. I think that's a big thing. I think just like the way men are raised and the way we are taught to cope with like trauma and turmoil has a big thing to do with like why men are just, not to be funny, are just good at committing suicide, like it's or successful at it,
Yeah.
you know.
I think too. I think the biggest theme is losing my train of thought. No, it's a lot of men where you see different methods and ways from an outside perspective on what a man's supposed to be. I mean, you can even find the definition of a man. I know I looked up several definitions to figure out what is a man, and some of them are very different. There's some of them that overlap, but a lot of them are drastically different. And how many boys or men are looking at multiple definitions? A lot of times when we're looking at definitions to figure out what am I, they're kind of at that point where it's like, I just need an answer. I need to figure out why or what's going on. They're not willing to make that time to do more research.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So I think another thing too is that we don't, with technology, speaking of technology and all these different devices and tools we have, we spend less time with ourselves, figuring out who we are, focusing on the inside. And when you lack that inside knowledge of who you are, it goes back to you turn to outside resources. You look at Jordan Peterson, you look at Andrew Tate, you look at a male role model that you see yourself becoming, and you try to implement and imitate. As humans, even as children, we learn best through imitation, through shadow work. And if we see something that someone has, there's a high chance we're going to implement every single thing that that person does. So then we will, in return, hopefully get what they have.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, especially kids. I know like I mean, when they say that kids are like sponges, they will internalize everything. Yeah. Like those, have you seen those memes where they're like, oh, me watching a movie as a kid and like slowly transforming into that personality. That's that
Just
is
like me
no
for real.
joke. Yeah, that is no
Yeah.
joke. Kids will literally do that. They watch Deadpool 1 and they feel like they can like go off, like a sailor. Their
Mm-hmm.
mouths and with their actions. And it's like, dang.
Dude, I watched Kill Bill, even like on the topic of like coping mechanisms of like when I watched Kill Bill 2 when I was like 7 or something, and like my house used to have like a rock wall, like a rock walls like a on it in it. And I remember like I would come home from school like in middle school, and like my dad would like be in the garage or like wouldn't be home, he'd be somewhere, and I'd be home alone, and I would just go to the rock wall and I would punch it with like of like the intent of like, oh, I'm like, it's like Kill Bill right now. I'm like breaking out of the coffin. Like that way, if I ever need to have really strong fists, I can do that. And it's like, and I would do it until like I would break skin and it would like bleed, and I would just hide it from my parents. And like I didn't think, and like literally, I was just taking from like I was taking an idea of strength or power that I saw in media, and I was applying it to myself and using it as a means of like committing self harm. And like it was like it's strange, but yeah, no, like, and it was just because I saw, and I got the idea from Kill Bill too. Now, I'm not saying like media is like the end all be all of like what defines people, but I mean, it's what people do with that media, and it's interesting to see that.
It's
Yeah.
how you respond to it.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's true. It's true. I think with kind of going back to it, I think like with a guy, it is I feel like it is seen more like, depression, how it leads to like suicide, because again, so many guys are taught to internalize and never to express. So a lot of time, um, it's like I forgot who said it. I don't remember the name of the mentor, and I wish I did because it was such a good speech. It was such a good example. They were saying, there's going to be parts of your life where um, where it's going to be, like this door leads to anxiety, this door leads to depression, this door leads to like ruminating thought, and those are the doors where people will just they'll close those doors and they won't ever go back in them. They shut off the light, they lock the door, and they never go back into it. And
Mhm.
for guy, it's like, what again, like what is that doing for you? What does that do for you?
Yeah.
You're essentially leaving all of like the storage, all that emotional baggage, all that emotional trauma, the verbal trauma, the mental trauma in that room. And if
Yeah.
you never actually clean it out, how do you expect to like, heal from that? How do
Yeah.
you expect to get rid of it?
Yeah. And it's difficult because it comes to like the whole conundrum that like I'm sure every guy has kind of felt it. It's like, do I express myself openly in this moment? Like there's an opportunity right now to say something about myself and to get something off my chest and to maybe make someone else feel better even. Do I
Yeah.
take this opportunity to express myself but risk looking like a wuss and losing social credit points? Or
Yeah.
do I stay stoic and maybe make a joke at this person's expense and look cool and seem stoic, seem like a dude? It's as a man, it comes into that like social, like psychosocial, like conundrum of like affirming your own affirming your own identity that you're cultivating. Like what Mario said, like not many people, we aren't shown a lot of examples of masculinity. It's
Yeah.
There's a very narrow example of it. So it's like, do I do my I'm gonna do my best to adhere to this idea that might not even apply to me. I haven't even checked if it applies to me. There's probably other guys that I apply more to, but I'm gonna stick to this one guy. Or do I like stray away from that and like create my own version of it? But that's difficult. That's scary for kids. That's because they face like social, like they face like bullying, they face like social like repercussions. And I'm seeing that right now again, like with like all the boys that I work with, because they're all like in high school age. Like it's interesting how to see how they've changed since middle school when they were a lot more like loose and like, oh, I'm gonna say how I feel, and now they're like talking about crashing out. And I'm like, what the heck are you talking about crashing out for? Like, you live in the suburbs, homie. Like, relax. Like, like if there was a time and place to crash out, like you're not at it, and that's okay. And I don't say those things. I invalidate them and I listen to what they have to say. But in my head, that's what I'm thinking. Is like, you don't have a reason to crash out. Like, really, like, chill out. Like, just go get some more. Let's go to 7-Eleven. I'll buy you in Arizona. Like, chill. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying? Like
it's like, let me be your outlet. You know what I mean? Like, I know that you have a lot
exactly.
in there, and you're noggin, all your hormones are raging, all these thoughts are raging. Like, all you need is an outlet. All you need is somebody to talk about it with, go
Hmm.
through it, explore it with,
Hmm.
and that's something that I tell my clients too. I'm like, like I get that again, society and our parents and their generational trauma has taught them one thing, but I tell them, I'm like, I'm here, to listen to you. I'm here as somebody who is unbiased. I don't know you, and I tell them like I may be the one with the title. People call me the professional, but honestly, I say you guys as a professional because you guys are the ones talking about your issue. You guys are the ones who experienced it. You guys are the ones that are allowing me into your life through your eye, through your heart, through your mind, through your feeling. So in the room, you're the expert here. So you need to tell me like what not. You need to tell me. I encourage you guys. Tell me what's going on. Because
Yeah.
I do need them to tell me what's going through their mind, what happened in that moment, what
Hmm.
they wanted to change differently. I think going to like what you were saying about children, like adolescent, I get that their hormones are like all over the place and their mind is all over the place. Um, I heard, I kind of heard like this like example, and again, I don't remember from where, but they were saying like the person said like there was these two kids and they were about to fight. And you got all these other kids around them, it's chanting on like, fight, fight. And um I think the bell had rung. And what they did was the teacher ended up taking the two students, you know, and he had like once all the kids were out of the classroom, the teacher had the student sit down. This is just like a story, like an example, you know? And they were like, okay, they're like, so you guys wanted to fight, right? Go ahead, go at it,
Hmm.
you know? And he looked at student A looked at student B, and he was like, well, no. He's like, why not? You were so ready to do it when everybody was there, when everybody was chanting, when everybody was cheering you on to fight. Come on, go for it. The room is open. You know, the floor is open. You want to go at it so badly? Go ahead. And student A was like, well, no, like, you know, and the teacher was like, well, why not? What's changed? And, you know, student A and student B were like, well, because it's dumb. And like, well, why is it dumb? Like, you're so ready to do it, you know? And they're like, well, yeah, but like, I don't even remember like why I was mad. Like, you know, it's dumb. I don't want him to hit me, you know? And it's like, it's in those moments where like people they get so much in their heads and they let their emotions run it. They let their emotions run their actions, you know, their behaviors, their mindset. And it's like it's in a way it's like the same way with depression. It's the same thing kind of like with depression because people get so much in their head and they run with it. When in reality it's like what were to happen if they were to actually get the answer to those questions that were making them depressed, to the experiences that were making them depressed. What were to happen if, let's say, somebody fell into depression because, you know, dad was never around and they never supported them, they never called, they never texted, they never even tried to like look for them. What were to happen if that person were to write a letter, you know, asking all the questions that they wanted and them actually getting a response back somehow? Whether it was an actual, like a call, a text, an actual letter, or no response. These are things that I do deal with on the daily basis with clients, you know, and I told them like, if, you know, if mom or dad was never there or they were abusive, I said, there's going to be time and there's going to be situations where they're going to say something, they're going to do something, they're going to get in your head some way, somehow. But that's because they've allowed, you know, that's what they've learned in their life. They projected, they let their trauma out, they let their anger out onto you. I said, and like sometimes, you know, some people just aren't emotionally intelligent. They don't have the emotional intelligence to know how to handle it, to know how to mend and to help you heal from that. I said, honestly, can you live with that? I asked them, can you live with that? Because sometimes the answer is going to be no answer at all. Are you strong? Not are you strong enough, but rather, would you be able to have peace with never getting the closure to why they said certain things? Because if not, you yourself are gonna allow yourself to be stuck in that depression. There's a really old saying that goes, you know, you are your own worst enemy. But I tell them like I would like to believe, and if not, I would like to add to that saying, you are your own worst enemy, but you are also you know, your own best mentor, your own best cheerleader and all that. Shout out to Pastor Pablo, you
Hey.
know, for letting us in on that one. But you know, I tell them that all the time. Like you are your own worst enemy, yes, because you are the one that stays in your head the most out of anybody. You're the one that overanalyzes it, that overthinks, that overstimulates yourself, and that even like overly and harshly criticize your own self more than anybody else, because nobody else is gonna tell you all the harsh things, criticize you the harshest, or speak down on yourself the way that you are in your own head. So,
Yeah.
you know, so what are you gonna do? How are you gonna move on moving forward? Are you gonna continue to allow yourself to do that, or are you gonna help yourself out of this? Are you gonna pull yourself out of this?
Yeah, it's a big one. Being able to, that big question, asking how are you going to get out of this is like, okay, I'm
Mhm.
stuck in this situation. What can we
Right.
do about it? And we talked about it. You mentioned a couple of times, Mario, is that a lot of people, it's like people express their emotions, they express how they feel. And then the very important question, especially for men, is now that you have this understanding, what are you going to do with this knowledge? How are you going to
Mm.
get yourself out of this rut? Or what steps are you going to do to not get back into this? cycle.
Yeah. And there's a lot of coping skills, you know. There's definitely a lot of coping skills, which I mean I can talk about more towards like the end because I know we have a third question.
Yeah.
But what do you
Yeah.
guys think? Like any input, any feedback? What do you guys, anything that you guys want to share?
Yeah, no, I mean it is definitely like a thing when you ask someone like, well, what are you gonna do about it now? I'm in the poetry space. Art spaces get like a reputation of being very like, ooh, like we're healing here kind of thing, especially the poetry spaces. And I will say, even for my own, I can even like say for myself, sometimes when I write something and I go and share it up there, I'm like kind of asking for help because like I just don't know what to do. And I know what the problem is, and I feel like I know what the problem is. I just don't know what to do. And like I'm scared. And I'm just like sad because I feel like I'm sad, but then I don't want to stop being sad because I'm like, why should I not be sad? And I'm like, and then I get into like a weird loop of like, just write another poem about being sad. I'm more sad again now again. Oh, go listen to other people being sad in their poetry. Well, actually kind of makes me feel better, but I'm still kind of sad. I don't know. Sometimes it almost feels like, like they say bravery is the overcoming of fear.
Oh,
And heat and cold is the absence of heat. And so like maybe like hope is the overcoming of hopelessness. I don't know. Like maybe there's something to that. Like maybe I'm just sometimes I feel like I don't know, maybe I'm just wired to be like pessimistic. I like to say realistic sometimes. I think I'm a very optimistic person, but I think I'm a very optimistic person because I think about a lot about like the things that could go wrong. I think I overanalyze a lot. This year, especially these past like 4 months, I've really just kind of been like what you said. It's like, okay, man, like, you catastrophize. You have a tendency to look at the negative outcomes and be like, oh man, that could happen. Now do something about it. Take a step to achieve a positive outcome. What can you do? What steps can you take to reach some positive outcome of like being up on a stage and sharing what you wrote, of talking to someone you were too anxious to talk to before, of making more friends, of going outside more, of achieving like a PR or something. It's like, and I think even like without that, I think I've still worked very hard and I achieve a lot of things. Sometimes I feel like ganas isn't like enough. It's like you can have the ganas to make something, get something done, definitely. It's just a matter of like finding that equilibrium within yourself of like, I'm working hard for what? Like, what is this working hard going to get you close to? What is this working hard going to help you reach?
mm,
And are you going to be happy with it? Is that even where you want to get to? Is your ladder even leaning up against the right wall? Like, I really actually right now, honestly, I've been very busy this past year, this past like since January with projects of acting and directing and writing. And it's the most busy I've been in like ever with this. And I'm really happy and I feel very blessed. But yeah, and I feel myself becoming kind of like fried in a way that like I don't want to stop doing it. I really don't. But I gotta like step back and not want to control and hold everything and make it happen and just let go and just take a more supportive role on something else. Obviously, still do what I like, still write, still act, still, but yada yada. But maybe something like a little lighter so I can like recoup, like, and I could process stuff that like has kind of come up in the past year or that's or things that have kind of clicked for me, but I haven't had a chance to like, I don't feel as if I've had a chance to like like ease into the right place maybe where they're meant to be,
yeah.
yeah. Yeah. And as far as like why more men are committing suicide, I think it kind of goes into it. It's like I think the pace of life is just so fast right now. Everything is like you said, like with these things, the thing I'm looking into right now, like with these things, it's like, yeah, like it has so many positives and it has so many not so positives. You know, it's so much interconnect, and the most interconnectivity we've ever experienced as a race, whilst also being the most isolating we've ever been as a race.
Yeah.
And you know, and that's isn't that something? Like, isn't that something? You can see what everyone else in the world is doing, yet you still, like you were saying, I think like you were saying Mario B or Mario J, when you guys are saying like, oh, Mario B, I think you're saying like judging yourself, critiquing yourself the most like intensely.
Yeah.
Like I'm look like, this whole like call, I keep on looking at myself and like I'm like, well, that's weird. You know, like, oh, hey, you know, like that's I think all this like not even just the technology, I think just the pace of life in general with like work and inflation and not even like politics necessarily, just like economy. Like it's just like staying alive has never been easier.
Yeah.
Staying in contact with people has never been easier, but living has never been more like anxiety inducing, and like interacting has never been more like obstructed, it seems like.
Yeah. And so like I guess like the suicidal rate of it.
Mhm.
Um, I did look at this article and it is by the CDC. So it is. Wait, I'm gonna share a little bit. Sorry, of what you were mentioning right now. Um, because I've felt it too, and I want to say part of the answer to it, and like a part of like the answer of like a coping skill that can help out with that as well, because I know that can lead into depression. Um, so suicide rate, I did see that, and it does say like the suicide rate among male in 2022 was approximately 4 times higher than the rate among females. Males make up 50% of the population, but nearly 80% of suicide. And again, like, when you're not taught the right coping skill, what, like, what's your outlet?
Mhm.
What's your outlet? How are you dealing with it? How are you taking care of yourself? And if you're not, I mean, you're literally going to drive yourself crazy, with all those thoughts, all those depressive thoughts and everything. People say man up. Okay, cool. So then my job as a man is to shut up, keep all my thoughts internalized and just eventually one day just kind of explode. It's like a pressure valve. It's just there and just keeps going and going and going until it just explode. And I mean, society's just gonna have to accept it and they're just gonna have to forgive me because I'm a guy and that's normal.
Mhm.
No, it's not. That is not okay. If
Mhm.
anything, I feel like men's mental health is, I mean, it clearly, it's at a really low percentage. Like a lot of people don't really care. Like there's like I think like it's being made more aware now. It's being brought more into awareness on social media. And somebody made like a little compilation video where they took a compilation of different calls from men. They asked them like, "What do you do for your depression? What do you do in the times that you feel depressed or anxious?" You know, and a lot of them were like, "Nothing. I don't do anything." Another question was like, "Who do you call for help?" And a couple of them were like they laugh and they're like, "What do you mean? Who do I call for help? Like, there's nobody. There's nobody
Mhm.
I can call. Nobody wants to hear me out. Nobody wants to listen to me, you know?" And again, it all goes back to like, what are these men being taught? Are they being taught to learn how to have the coping skills and the emotional intelligence in how to take care of themselves, or are they teaching them to just shut up and internalize it and move on, move forward? Because nobody cares. So that's just kind of my response on like the percentage. Um, you know, say suicide methods, firearms are the most common method used in suicides. Firearms are where you in more than 50% of suicide in 2022. And that sucks because it's like clearly like, you know, they see life so bad to the point where they're like, you know what? I need something that's gonna be a surefire way that's gonna take me out. Like there cannot be an excuse. There cannot be a method of resuscitation, nothing. I'm done, I'm out. And I think like for you, I would say, Chris, I would say it kind of sounds like you're going through burnout. And
Mhm.
I know I get it because for me, I'm not gonna lie to you. I was recently going through a state of burnout myself. I didn't really realize it, but until I started reacting. At some point I was like, oh my goodness, like, I'm so freaking tired of this. Like, I'm so like exhausted. I can't believe I have to do all this, and this, plus my own chores, plus my own, that, plus I have to study for this. And like, it's like, whoa, like, I did have people tell me, they're like, whoa, like, that's not you. Like, what is up with you? What is going on? Why are you being so reactive? And I told him, I was like, damn, I was like, I'm sorry. You know, I
Mm.
I did not mean to react like that. Like, please don't. They're like, are you taking care of yourself? And I was like, damn, like that conviction, like that being called out like that, I was like, huh.
Real.
I really had to step back and I did have to ask myself, I was like, am I taking care of myself or am I like lacking in that area?
I was gonna say that's a good friend though. Like to not even like kind of like I mean obviously to kind of be like, hey man, that's not cool. But then to also be like, you good is like that takes a lot of like emotional maturity on that person's part. And honestly, like kudos to them. And that's very kind of them to even care enough about you to be like, hey, like, like I know that's not like you. Like, what's up? Like that's really nice.
Yeah. I would say like I think a huge thing for me it was actually from I learned this from my professor. Professor slash he is a coordinator of like my internship slash therapist. Really cool dude, really chill dude. I have a lot of love for this guy. Um, and he was actually I did my first class with him, and one thing that he taught us, he was like, I'm gonna teach you guys about a word. He said, and I want you guys to like tell me like what do you think this is? Do you practice it? Do you even know what it really means to practice this? And I was like, oh, he was like the word is self-care.
Mm.
I know it's like kind of like two words, but it's like one word because there's like a hyphen. But he said like self-care. He's like, what does it mean to you? And of course, like within the Hispanic community, again, like, they're always like, self-care, like what the hell is that? Like, no, you don't have time for that. Ponte las pilas, y
Mm-hmm.
a trabajar. Which in English, it literally translates to like self-care, like what the heck is that? Like, you know, put some batteries on, like get the lead out, you know what I mean? And go work, go do something.
Yeah.
Staying in your head, There's no time for that. And so I when he gave us that talk, I was like, oh, I was like, okay. I was like, I think like he's really preaching to the choir. Like I feel like he really like speaking to me. Um I'm not gonna lie, like in those moments where he was discussing all that, it was a little hard to hear. It was a little hard to hear. I almost became a little teary-eyed, I almost got a little emotional just from my past, just from thinking about like this Hispanic culture and all that kind of stuff. But I was like, dang, like that's so true. And I think, I would say for people who are going through depression, going through burnout, because that can also lead into depression, um, self-care, honestly, like practice it. And what does self-care look like? That's a great coping skill because self-care is essentially like anything that you do for yourself that's gonna bring, those dopamine levels up, like those feel-good chemicals, serotonin, dopamine, all that kind of stuff. What is gonna make you or bring you that sense of joy back into your life? You know,
Mm-hmm.
is it going to get a massage? Cool, go for it. Is it going to get a manicure, a pedicure? Do it. Going to a concert? Do it. Going to the
See,
mall, buy yourself some new shoe. Splurge on yourself a little bit, with the money that you have. Even if you don't have a lot, like if you've been struggling with money, put $50 aside, something, a month even. Or even just in that moment, if you feel like, oh my God, like I can't, my bills are just like catching up to me. My college tuition is catching up to me. My loans, my rent, my car insurance, all that. I don't have any money left for me, like whatsoever. Like I get it. I get it. In those moments, Even if you have like a little bit of money set aside, like, and it's gonna bring you joy, if you know that there's something that you've been wanting that you haven't been able to afford, but that's gonna make you happy,
Mhm.
go for it. If you have a little bit of that money to like, use on that and you know you're gonna be okay for the rest of the month, do it. If it's gonna make you happy and it's not gonna hurt you or hurt anybody else, go for it. Self-care is a huge, huge, huge part of making sure that we are taking care of ourselves mentally, spiritually, and emotionally and physically. You
Yeah.
know, and there's a
Just
lot of there's a lot of other coping skill.
Mhm.
There's
Thank you.
different kinds of psychotherapy. There's cognitive behavioral therapy, psychoanalysis, acceptance and commitment therapy. Um, Again, it even says here self-care and lifestyle changes. Um, you know, says there are also lifestyle changes that have been proven to help day-to-day symptoms. Incorporating exercise, it can help produce immediate endorphins, boost your current mood and healthier body, supports a healthier mind in the long run. Meditation or mindfulness practice, checking in with yourself about your mood symptoms. Are you taking the time to sit with yourself where there's nobody else, to tell you, man up, get out of your head. You're wrong. Stop being such a wuss, to say it in a nice way. Um, are you giving yourself that time to um, create like a safe space in the quiet of your room, in the quiet of your car, to really, give yourself that quiet space, that time to just shut your brain off, listen to music, pray to God, listen to worship, and just be with yourself. Listen to your body. What are you feeling? What are you thinking? Breathing, giving yourself just a pause, just breathe, you know.
really makes a big difference sometimes. It's
Uh,
really interesting. Like right when you said breathe in, it's funny. It's similar to when you
Mm.
say drink water or when you say water, you have a higher chance of drinking water. It's the same thing with breathing. And when people hear breathe, it's a reminder. It's like, hey, we can relax. We're breathing. That's a win. It's small, but it's big.
yeah.
And to be able to get out of these funks, things don't need to be that extreme. It can be I woke up, I brushed my teeth, having that attitude of gratitude. That's something I've been working on these past few months is a gratitude journal, even though it's something small. Like today, I'm grateful for waking up this morning. I'm grateful for having legs so I can play football. Just the small things. So then when I'm going back into a phase of frustration, depression, and ungratefulness, in all honesty, too, I can read all those things I was grateful for. I'm like, hey, I may not have what I want, or I'm not getting what I feel like I deserve, but I am going to choose to be grateful for all these things I do have.
Hmm. Yeah, that's really good. I think for Chris, I think like I get that you say like you're in the arts, right? I'm also into arts. I'm actually a musician myself. I play guitar, I play bass. Um,
Sick.
yeah, I'm very into like all that kind of stuff.
Cool.
So like what I would do, like when you say like, oh well, like I've noticed I've been making more depressive stuff, more depressive music or like poems and all that. I would say like it's not always bad to lean into it because even in while leaning into it, you're allowing your mind and your body to express outwardly. You're allowing like everything in your mindset to come out to life and and onto paper and onto words, and you're allowing yourself to have that free space and that safe space to talk about you know what is making you sad. It's like
Mhm.
your way of expressing your depression.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thanks, MB. Mario B. I No, and your whole explanation about self-care too made me think about stuff that like I recently have been like taking steps for also without even thinking about it. Honestly, you put a word to it. This past last week, I got coffee from like three different cafes because I was working pretty much every day. I tutor clients. I usher at 2 theaters, and I deliver Amazon when I need to. And on top of that, I act and like I do all my stuff. And like I think I'm just so happy to have like such a busy life. At the same time, it does burn you out. Even if it makes you happy, it can still burn you out. You can even no matter how much you love pizza, you don't want to eat it every day. You'll probably want to have something different. And yeah, just last week I had like coffee from like 3 different cafes, and it made me feel nice. It was like, wow, like this is nice. Like it's not even like it wasn't expensive. I could afford it. It wasn't hurting me in any way. And like I wasn't splurging. I wasn't getting like a lot too much caffeine. I'm not a big caffeine drinker. It was just mostly for the experience of it. And it made me think about this one other meme I saw on Instagram too, where it was like, oh, me feeling like there's no point to life and I'm hopeless and there's like no point in going forward. And then also me, I take a different route home and get a soda from a market that I've never been to before. I feel better. And it's like, yeah, it's like you're saying, it's like honestly, like the also a while back, I guess something I was doing for self care too. I was trying to taste every Mountain Dew flavor,
Oh
and
wow.
yeah, of course, dude, awesome, right? And I had like an Excel spreadsheet of like all the ones I tried, and yeah, like I was just rating them. I just fell off of it. I just fell off of it because I started drinking less soda also, which kind of did also help me. I think maybe I was going a little over above and beyond with that soda. And yeah, like sometimes like I just go and get like a boba drink like 4 days in a row, and I'll start judging myself. I'm like, oh man, you know, this isn't good for you. And then just you just explaining that was like, wait, what the heck am I trying to prove to anyone? What the heck am I trying to prove to myself like by not getting boba? Like I exercise regularly. I have a pretty okay diet. No, I have a good diet. I have a pretty like healthy diet. I take my vitamins. I like, you know, I do these things to take steps to have a healthy body. And then it's like I'm giving myself like crud over like getting boba just because it makes me feel good during the day. Like, whatever, man. Like, if it makes you feel happy, like, why? And that comes with the over analyzing thing where, like, if it makes me feel happy, I'm like, why does it make me feel happy? Why am I doing? I don't need that to make me feel happy. I'm not gonna do it. It's like, well, like, why am I doing that to myself? And it's all just like this, like, trying to posture and like, fucking like, be all fucking macho, like, fucking like, yeah, I don't need nothing. I don't need none of that. But it's like, why, fool? Like, what's your big deal? What's your deal? Why
Yeah,
not?
I get
Yeah.
that. I get
Yeah.
that. And yeah, I think like that's nice. Like, you get yourself like a little treat, you're in there
Yeah.
your
Yeah.
workday. It's cool. You do a good job, get yourself a little treat.
Yeah.
So again, as long as it's not like harming your like physical health or anything like that.
Right. Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
you know, Yeah. And so long as it's not burning a hole in your pocket. But
Right. Exactly.
but yeah, no, I feel all that. I feel all that. And it's the same here. I too like to do that. There's times where I'm like, do I want to get a big expense for this paycheck, or do I wait, and I save up a little bit and then I pay a big expense.
Yeah.
And it's like that's kind of like that is practicing self-care, kind of like retail therapy.
Yeah.
Retail therapy, but making sure that I'm not burning a hole in my pocket either. So
Right.
yeah, but again, it's like what's gonna make you happy, and as long as it's not hurting you, your wallet, or like, anybody else, um, practice that self-care, you know. Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah. Mario, what do you have to say that like what's anything else? Any other questions? Any other input, feedback?
Definitely don't want to burn a hole in your pocket. Um, but yeah, no, it's true. It's really true. I know financially, it's a lot of us financially aren't always in the best situations, but we have that opportunity to live life as well. Life is only temporary. So why are we so focused on meeting expectations that are placed on us? Not a lot of times when we are not even putting expectations. Expectations are put upon us, and we feel like we need to reach these expectations. And in reality, there's no expectations. It's whatever expectancy and expectations that we put on ourselves, going back to what you said, Mario, our critic. What are we doing? What are we doing? Are we doing something right? Are we doing something wrong? Why are we not doing something right? Which isn't a bad thing, just having that self evaluation, but being okay with yourself, going to that self care is like, hey, I didn't do well, but we can try again. It's being able to talk to yourself. And ironically, learning, building that relationship with yourself will eventually be pushed outwards and you become a better person overall because we're all like tea. I use this analogy a lot, especially as teachers. We're all teapots and we can only pour so much into other people.
Yeah.
It's impossible to pour into someone when you don't have anything to pour. So that self-care definitely is a way to fill up that teapot.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that is about it. Did you any final sayings that we got? Any golden nuggets we can share?
I would say just kind of highlighting a couple of things. Definitely practice self-care, if you practice spirituality, definitely, practice spirituality. If you're Christian, definitely, and you're going through depression, it's fine. It's understandable. God understands. He had a couple of disciples go through depression themselves. And look at the book of Job. Definitely read through the book of Job
Mhm.
because my God, did
Yeah.
that guy went through it. But
It was
poor
tested.
guy, yeah,
Mhm.
no, yeah, and he went through it, but I mean, look at how he still sought God. Look how he still loved God. And I think another highlight, definitely, if you're going through depression, if you are a Christian, or even if you're not Christian, one thing that my pastor, taught me, Pastor Pablo taught us, was who runs the throne of your mind? Is it God or is it your emotions?
Mhm.
Mm.
Huge thing. Huge thing in the world of Christianity. Because if you let your emotions run you, you let your imagination run you, what's in our hearts, again, what the Bible says, that our hearts and your mind can lead you astray like that. But with God, he calms the storms.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. And I guess the one last thing I'll say is for me every week I go to this poetry night every Wednesday in East LA.
so like,
East Oh yeah, open mic. You're free to come up. People go up and they sing. People go up and they play their music. People go up and they share stories. People go up and they read poetry, mostly poetry, but it's a variety show. There's like live painting there. People are selling their wares, like artists and stuff.
that's
It's
cool.
a good time. I invite everyone. It's East Low Soul on Instagram if you want to come check it out. And I guess just like like kind of like what Mario was saying, and I guess like what I was also kind of like getting at too about like if there's one thing you could do in the day that just makes the rest of your day like feel good and it doesn't bring a hole in your pocket like Mario said, and it isn't like hurting anyone else. I mean, hurting yourself either. Go for it. Even with that like poetry night every Wednesday, like sometimes I feel myself like, man, I'm tired. I don't even want to go today. I'm so busy. I got to take care of all this other things, but I still make time in my week for it because I know that I'm just gonna feel great afterwards, and I always do. I always do because it's just great community. And I guess for other people too listening, guys or girls, non-binary, whatever, like if there's something in your life that like will do you good and like it just feels hard sometimes to get to it, understandable. Like you don't have to do it right now if you don't want to, but just know like there's things out there that are always there for you, be they people or God or yourself or literature, whatever. And like make time for it, and I promise it'll pay off, and it'll pay off in its own way. It might not fix everything, but man, it'll make the solutions seem a lot clearer.
Yeah,
um yeah, so I'll just say that, like stay up y'all, and talk to somebody. People are always willing to listen, I promise.
I second that. That's another great coping skill. Finding a supportive social network,
Yeah,
friends, other people who are going through it too.
yeah,
Uh, seek them out. Seek them out, and hopefully they'll be willing to help you out as well.
right.
Yeah, definitely. But no darkness lasts forever. And why end something? Why end something? Why end something permanent when you're just given a temporary setback?
Yeah.
There's always light at the end of the tunnel. There's a lot of quotes out there. You guys can look up for yourself. But yeah, at the end of the day, reach out, be curious. We say that all the time. And PSA, pass a smile, stay safe, always be awesome. We'll see you guys next time. Stellar.